Hello, I'd like to welcome you again to the Linguistic Landscape Autoethnography of Place course. In our last lecture, I laid out some of the basic definitions of the linguistic landscape. That was basically to give some background of the different ways that the linguistic landscape has been looked at. In this lecture, I want to continue this process in a more practical way, I think, by looking at some of the different writers of the linguistic landscape. So let me first propose a very basic hypothesis, though. The linguistic landscape is a composition constructed by multiple asynchronous and uncoordinated actors. What I mean by that is there are multiple messages. These people are not working at the same time and they're not coordinating their actions in most cases. So it's different from other compositions where we can think of a sort of a unifying intention. Here we have multiple different intentions. And as anybody who knows anything about writing knows, who the writer is says something about what they are trying to achieve. So when we are trying to unpack the linguistic landscape, it's a good idea to have some sense of who the writers of the linguistic landscape are. So one of the main writers of the linguistic landscape, as you might expect, is the government and public authorities. They create official signage, such as street names, traffic signs, public notices, often reflecting the language policies and social norms of that particular area. So this is an example of some road signage. This is a place I always get lost at, but that's a different matter. This is underneath on one of the highways out of Pittsburgh, and you can see different streets leading in different directions, all of which are clearly marked so that you know where you're going. This is a different public sign, Welcome to Wales. Notice it's in English and in Welsh, representing the transition into Wales and the recognition of the Welsh language and the people who speak it in Wales. Another form of very prevalent writer are businesses and commercial entities. Shop signs, advertisements, and brand names are crafted by businesses, and the aim is to attract customers and to convey a particular type of identity. So this is once again in Pennsylvania. It's once again from the car. This is a place called Breezewood, PA. And as you can see, as you're driving down the highway here, there are multiple different signs which attempt to attract you in different ways. Pizza Hut, gas, different types of gas, all of them competing for your attention so that you will enter into their particular business. Then there's tourism and cultural organizations who create signs. So these signs are aimed at tourists. They're like maps, guides, historical markers, and often include a multilingual content to cater to diverse audiences. This is probably one of the most famous places in the world in Jerusalem. It's the Via Dolorosa, and we saw a tourist group. The place is marked for them, and it's marked in 3 languages, as you can see, and people know where they are, and supposedly the whole discourse of this place comes into play. There are also community groups. Local communities interact with the linguistic landscape, making their communities, sometimes it's with murals, handmade signs, professional signs, and all of these are to express the importance at what I would call a grassroots level. So they're very local type of messaging. So here we have, this is from a place in Pittsburgh called Homewood, an economically depressed area, also a predominantly African American area. And we have this Liberation Wall mural, which says it all, and you can see these sort of aspirational aspects of the messaging that we have here. Then, of course, a large part of the linguistic landscape is advertising companies. These include digital screens, billboards, and other types of display, and they all aim to grab attention for commercial purposes using the linguistic landscape. Um, this is a place called Grove City in Pennsylvania, and you can see here a big sign for a restaurant outlet called Primanti Brothers, and underneath it you can see Enterprise. And notice that behind it you have McDonald's, and of course Primanti is trying to compete with the better known arch of McDonald's. Then there are individuals in the linguistic landscape who want to express their creativity, opinions, values, and identity through graffiti, murals, personal yard signs, protest placards, community events, and flyers in some cases. Here we have three examples. The example in the middle is of some tagging, people putting their own name. The two examples at the bottom are from Abbey Road in London. One is a Free Palestine, Free Gaza set of signs, and the other is a George Floyd sign. There's a ton of graffiti about George Floyd across the world, by the way, and we'll be seeing it in quite a few of the coming lectures on this issue. Now, the signage in the linguistic landscape and the interactions can be intentional, but it's often uncoordinated and incidental. Here we have an example. We have a large mural, a very beautiful mural, but then you have an air conditioning and plumbing sign and just the name of a place sort of sign. There's no real coordination between these three. It's just they're there and uncoordinated. But there are often cases where it is coordinated and the aim is to give a response to a situation or a place or interaction with a specific message. This is a really remarkable graffiti picture. And this is the port in Beirut. After a blast, there was an enormous blast there, and that really caused a large amount of devastation, as you can see. And this is graffiti that was written, "My government did this," and you get the idea of how the messaging here interacts with the site itself and the type of message that's being presented. In this picture, you can see a dialogue that happens in the linguistic landscape. In this case, there was some graffiti underneath the white wash, and that was whitewashed out. And unfortunately, that artist died, and someone who knew that and recognized the graffiti wrote over that, "You painted over dead artist's work, be ashamed." This is from River Park in Pittsburgh. But you see how the dialogue is happening between the different types of messages, including the whitewashed out. So in this lecture, I've just tried to present some of the writers, and perhaps you get some insight into who is creating the linguistic landscape, but also some insight into the aims of these different types of writer and how they can interact. Sometimes it's incidental, other times it's on purpose. Thank you for listening. We will be developing these ideas in the workshops later in this course.